Conceive, believe, achieve.
This is former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Michael Bisping.
Paddy the Baddy here. You're listening to Combat Sports UK.
And you're watching Combat Sports UK.
Joining me now, Richard Shaky Shore, the head of SHORE MMA, in New York now with Jack, just a few days away from competing with someone who, funny enough, is from my hometown, Ricky Simone. But how are you feeling, Richard?
Yeah, good, mate. We've been here now since last Thursday, so over the jet lag, we've acclimatized with our sleeping pattern is good. So what we got is Wednesday today. Last tough day tomorrow, really. Weight cut day tomorrow or tomorrow evening. But yeah, all good. His weight is good. His energy levels have been brilliant. It's been one of the best weight cuts we've had, if I'm honest. I think it's helped that he fought in March, hasn't had a chance to let himself gain, too much weight. So it's been out of one camp.
He's not small.
Yeah, no, he's a big bantam. He's a big bantamweight. You'll see that on the day.
And so obviously we're going to talk a lot about Jack, but before we talk Jack, I wanted to dive back a little bit. Rowan Crocker actually came home with the Four Nations gold at middleweight. That was a name that I was telling everyone, hey, watch out for this guy in the middleweight tournament. I believe most people thought Ambler was going to get it done. How was your experience at the Four Nations, and how proud of you, or how proud of Team Wales are you? And talk to me a little about Rowan in particular. He really stole the show for me in terms of
look, he's always been a talented grappler, but I think since he's joined us, he's been with us now about 4 or 5 years. I think he's been training up with us. He's turned into like a really well-rounded martial artist. You've seen when he won the Cage Warriors Academy belt, he showed a real clinic with his striking. The Four Nations, for that type of event, you've got to be wrestle and grapple heavy. You can't afford to be in stand-up wars. And I think probably he implemented that type of game plan better than anybody else on the day. But for me, and I know I'm biased, but I thought he was a stand-up fighter of the event.
I did as well. I think, especially with the competition faced and how well he did in his fights, I think he did fantastic.
Yeah, I don't think anybody else, and I might be wrong, I haven't looked at every single division, but he's fought a 7-0 kid from Scotland. He's fought an 8-0 guy that's ranked number 1 on Tapology in the UK for amateur middleweights. And then he's fought, Rhys Hughes is probably the second best middleweight behind Rowan in Wales. So there was no easy path to get in that medal. And he went out, and put a clinic on in every fight. I was glad for him to get a finish. But, I mean, our game plan for round 1 and round 2 was take down, control position and try not to pick up injuries and try not to exert too much energy. And I think he followed that to the T, to be fair to him. He's a really talented kid. He's a lovely lad with it. He's got his head screwed on. He's in no rush to, a lot of people said to me, is it time for him to go pro? I don't think he's in any rush to go professional. He gets much experience. These amateurs, John, have lost 2 years due to COVID. The pros have been able to get out there via UFC, Bellator, and Cage Warriors and whatnot. They've been putting on shows, but the amateurs have stood still for 2 years. So it's important Rowan completes his apprenticeship. I'd like to see him do one more IMAF tournament and maybe a couple more defenses of his Cage Warriors belt. And then maybe middle of next year, we'll have a look at him going pro.
And I like that approach because a lot of people just look at the number and the amount of fights and be like, well, he's had so many fights at amateur. Isn't it time? It's time when you're ready. It's really, if you can fine tune yourself and find the proper competition, push yourself in the right ways, why would you rush going pro? Especially considering it's not like the financial obligation when you turn pro is so big. The amateur scene in the UK is something that is really booming right now. There's no reason to rush it. And SHORE MMA has got so many guys in that scene that who better to listen to than Shaky in that aspect, correct?
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at the Welsh, the Cage Warriors Wales Academy cards, you look at the Four Nations, the level of competition there at amateur, any of those guys could drop in on the domestic scene and clean up a pro, but why turn pro when you're not getting paid a lot of money when you're first off? There's no rush these days. It's not like you're signing a UFC contract. You're probably going to get, £500-600 for your first fight. You're better off having as many amateurs, learn your craft. If you pick up your losses, nobody says, he's picked up several losses at amateur. Make sure your apprenticeship is done and you're ready for that professional start. So when you go into the pro ranks, you're ready to take it by storm.
It also,
like I said,
from being the guy as a pro, if you're a pro, right, and you're 7-0, think about it. There's guys who will duck fights 7 fights into a pro career. If you're taking your time as an amateur and really pushing yourself as much as you can, you're not going to be one of those guys. It's going to be kind of a smooth approach and a direct pathway once you make the jump.
Yeah, and the current climate, today's day and age, there is so many options for you with the IMAF tournaments. There's a lot of amateur, fantastic amateur events out there. There's no need for you to rush into it. I mean, when Jack Shore turned pro, we'd won the IMAFs, but we were struggling to get him any sort of fights then. Do you know what I mean? But the scene has moved on since then. Paul Reed and Goddard and Dan Hardy, they've done a brilliant job putting this Four Nations thing together. I'd like to see Wales, Scotland, England do their own national event as well, a similar sort of format to be, to get the English champion, Welsh champion, Scottish champion, and the Irish champion. So, lots of things happening on the amateur scene. I think it's exciting times to be involved in MMA.
I spoke with Reese McEwen earlier today, coincidentally, for Cage Warriors next weekend. He had rave reviews about Shore MMA, as does everybody, man. First, what do you got to say about Reese from the time you guys spent with him? I think Jack did get some work in with him for this camp, and I don't think it was specifically for the camp.
Reese has been down twice now. He's a really talented kid. He's a very humble lad as well. He reminds me very much about Jack. He's got a level head on him. He works hard. You wouldn't know he was in the gym if you didn't physically watch him training. He's not somebody who's loud, brash, but he's got a brilliant work ethic. And listen, let's make no bones about it. It takes a lot of balls for a young man to travel down from Scotland and walk into our gym when he doesn't know anyone. He doesn't know what sort of reception he's going to get. Fortunately, I pride myself on that we haven't got any assholes in the gym. We're a really unique bunch of guys.
He mentioned that he felt the no ego was a thing.
Definitely. And he was made so welcome because of his attitude and his approach, And listen, he's a talented kid. He give our guys. If you're a bantamweight professional or featherweight professional, there's not a better gym in Europe than our guys. You've got Jack Shore, Brett Johns, Josh Reed, Scott Pedersen. I've got an army full of amateurs that if I wanted to let them loose on the pro scene, I would start picking up wins straight away. So that pool between 135, well, even 125, I've got some kids in at 125, between 125 and 145. I don't think there's a stronger training group in Europe. So, he's had some good sparring partners. He's got some great guys to look up to there with Brett and Jack. They've done it. They've reached the heights of MMA, getting into UFC and Bellator. So, yeah, he's always welcome, Reese. And he's good for my lads. It's in a different body on the mat. And he's also helping Jack and Brett when they're preparing for fights as well.
Man, switching pages then. Jack Shore, Ricky Simone this weekend. What does Ricky bring to the table that Jack hasn't seen before? Is there anything, I should say, that Ricky brings?
For me, I think for both kids, I think Ricky and Jack are capable of beating anybody in that top 5. And I think props to both lads for taking this fight. I think there's a much easier route for Ricky in the top 15. There's a much easier route for Jack in the top 15. Says a lot about their character, says a lot about their ambition and mindset. It's a real 50-50 fight. We're going in there confident we're going to get the win, but we're under no illusions that, Ricky's a fantastic wrestler. He's tough. He throws heavy shots. You've seen him knock out Sanko in his last fight. He's on a tear. I think he's 3 or 4 fight win streak. Fantastic pedigree. But, we've had a good look at him. There's no easy fights in the top 15, John. So whoever they give us was going to be a tough matchup. But, I think stylistically it's a tough fight for both lads. And I think probably the winner, I would like, is going to get, a big name, whether that be like an old school guy, Dominic Cruz or Frankie Edgar, or, your Rob Fonts, your Mirabs. There's an abundance of talent.
Dominic Cruz. I think Dominic Cruz versus, who is it that he's about to fight? There's a fight coming up. Dominic Cruz is about to fight Chito Vera. Loser or winner of that fight could be.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be a great matchup, either of those guys. Same as against Aldo. The winner of that's probably going to get a title fight, but I think, the loser of that match isn't going to lose any stock. And, for the winner of this fight, that would be a good matchup as well.
Man, it's a hard one for me. Ricky Simone trains 5 minutes away from where I live at American Top Team Portland. So he's someone I'm always pulling for, but with how Jack's always been towards me, I've got the shirt on. It's clear which corner I'm in. I saw the tweet you put out and I agreed. How do you feel about seeing UFC London's next week? Obviously, Jack was one of the names that I kind of penciled in immediately when that card got announced. Didn't turn out that way. But you made another good point. Hey, it's okay to be on a New York card the week before UFC London. That's almost a compliment in and of itself. But how do you get dropped to the prelims and looking at that card? How, just talk to me a little bit on that, because I'm not feeling it.
Listen, I don't understand it. I mean, we wanted to be on UFC London. We made no bones about that. I mean, you know, Jack's one of the biggest draws in the country.
Listen to his reaction in the prelims.
Also, you know, Jack was a proper company man. During the lockdown, we traveled to Abu Dhabi, we traveled to Vegas. We were fighting middle of the night in Abu Dhabi. We were having to get up at 5 a.m. in Vegas because it was a British time show. So we were fighting 10 a.m. in the morning. No complaints. Jack's had 5 fights in the UFC. This is his 6th fight. I think we've had 12 opponents. We've never said no. You know, whoever they have put in front of us, we've signed that contract immediately. We've traveled to events where, while on the plane, somebody's pulled out, and 10 days out, we've took an opponent change. Then 2 days later, we've taken another. So I do feel he's disrespected a little bit. I mean, the argument for us putting this on the New York card was they wanted to raise his exposure in the United States.
Then you put him on the main card.
I agree that. And up until 2 weeks ago, ESPN and the UFC site were advertising him on the main card. So for me, it's on ABC. You know, we heard today that the ABC card is going to be one of the most watched events ever, is what they're anticipating, because it's a free channel in the United States.
It's massive. I cannot explain to you
but
how
then,
big it is.
And I look at that main card, and there's some fantastic fights on there. But I think Ricky against, and not just Jack, Ricky as well. You know, Ricky's number 11 in the world. That match has got to be a main card fight. Then they put us on the prelims, and we're not even the feature bout on the prelims. So, you know, for them to say to us, we're going to put you in the States because we want to raise your exposure, then Empress on the undercard.
I'm just going to say one thing.
Is mental.
Matt Schnell versus Sumader. I can't do the pronunciation. Muslim Salikov versus Li Jingling. Lauren Murphy versus Misha Tate. Shane Burgess versus Charles Jourdain. All are good fights, but I don't see how any of those fights takes precedence.
Yeah. Or the co-main event. You know, I think we should have even be co-main event. Shane and Charles Jourdain is a fantastic bout. Misha Tate, totally understand, she's a household name. You know, but no disrespect to anybody on there. Fantastic, they're on there.
No, they're all good fights. They're great fights.
Props to them. But for them to fly us to America, you know, we've had to come out 10 days early. We're doing our bit. Yeah, they're all good fights. But, you know, I'm yet to read a tweet or a post on Facebook or Instagram that's agreed with this card. Not one. Like, I've not read one where they've gone, yep, Shawn Simone should be a preliminary, you know, card bout. Every single thing I'm reading, and you're not talking hundreds, you're talking thousands, are saying, why is Simone and Shawn not on the main card? It's madness, mate. But maybe they'll show him a little bit more respect, you know, after this weekend, because I do feel that they don't respect him, because he's, you know, for me, he's a consummate martial artist. You know, people liken him to GSP, and I don't mean his fighting stuff, but also his, you know, he's been a martial artist since he's 6 years of age. You know, he's not one to be trash talking. He's not one to be shouting. He'll never change. You know, he's true to himself. He is what he is. And maybe we're being penalized for that, you know, but it's the ultimate fighting championship, not the ultimate talking championship, you know. So why are the top fighters not getting the props they deserve?
Well, if I were to ask a random fan, right, name me a UFC fighter actively fighting with the record of 16-0 or better, they'd freeze.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if you expand that to 16-0 with 6 UFC fights, there's nobody. It doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
But hey, it'll come, right? If you keep winning, there's no way they ignore you. Ricky Simone, action fighter. Everybody loves watching him fight. Jack has the chance to really make a statement this weekend. How has camp been? Has it been better or the same as usual, really?
No, you know, I'm not going to give the cliche, the greatest camp we've had. You know, Jack's solid training. He's consistent in every camp we've had. You know, he's been injury free, which has been a first for a very long time. We went into London injury free, but I mean, like he fought in Vegas with a broken shoulder and dominated that fight. You know, he's had a few injury issues, but no, he's, you know, no, there's no excuse for us. We're fully prepared. The weight management for the last 12 weeks, thanks to Jordan, his dietitian, has been brilliant. His work ethic is always second to none. So we are ready. You know, the cards will fall as they do, John. We are prepared. I dare say Ricky's had a fantastic camp as well. We know this is a 50-50 fight. And props to whoever comes out on top on Saturday.
So down the line, regardless of what happens here, win, lose, or draw, obviously Jack's career continues and you continue pushing forward. Who are some of the names in the bantamweight division that you think would not necessarily fights you want, but would be pretty cool to match up with Jack? Like, obviously, you're a fight fan. It'd be neat to see your son in there with Dominic Cruz and with, you know, like, what are some of those names?
I mean, exposure-wise, probably O'Malley is the fight people would want. You know, a win over O'Malley puts you up there. There's so many. You know, Frankie Edgar is somebody that myself and Jack have been fanboys of for the last 15 years. You know, he's somebody
that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me at all.
You know, his style of fighting, all the rest of it. You know, the way he carries himself. So there'd be a little bit of a bittersweet if we had to fight Frankie. Do you know what I mean? If it was put on the table, we would take it because it's a fantastic fight. It's a former 2-weight world champion. But you know, it'd be a bittersweet. As you said, I think Dominic against Chito, either of those would be great matchups.
The O'Malley fight, right?
O'Malley. I mean, the O'Malley fight. I don't think they'd give us the O'Malley fight.
I don't think O'Malley would ever mutter Jackson.
Not so much O'Malley. You know, O'Malley will only fight whoever's in front of him.
100%.
You know, the UFC brass are building this caricature around him. You know, he's a very talented kid. He's a really good fighter. Make no mistake. Don't let all the talk and the bright hair distract from that he's an elite level fighter. But I think stylistically, we would be a nightmare for him. An absolute nightmare. I mean, Jack's cardio is second, and then, you know, you could put him in a 5-rounder on Saturday, it'd be no problem at all. His wrestling, his defensive boxing, his offensive boxing, I think it all put together. I think we'd be a nightmare matchup for O'Malley.
I don't think Jack Shore is a name that'll ever really come off of the mouth of Sean O'Malley, just because of, like you said, stylistically doesn't really play into his advantage. And just in the lead up, Jack's not, I don't think he's one to play into the mind games. that would be an intriguing fight. It really would. But hey, it probably isn't one that he would look at himself. I think the potential of Dominic Cruz versus Jack Shore is something I would love to see.
Like, I can remember, like yesterday, I remember me and Jack watching Cruz's debut in the UFC, you know, and we followed him since. You know, again, another one, his personality, his record is second, and then he's one of the, you know, he'll be a Hall of Famer in a couple of years when he dominates. No so much about it. And just to test yourself against somebody of that caliber, you know, again, would be a brilliant opportunity. But like I said, these are all things, they're all much of a muchness. We have got a really, for me, I think we've got the most, probably outside the top 5, the most difficult matchup on Saturday we could have. You know, I think Ricky Simone brings a lot to the table that the other top 10 wouldn't bring to Jack. So, you know, we're concentrating and looking not past there, you know, at the moment.
It's a unique fight, and it's a unique fighting style that Ricky Simone brings. There's not many that can really emulate it in that top 10, but in a sense, fighting someone like Timur Valiev kind of prepared you for at least the physical size and strength of Ricky Simone. Do you think that there's anything from that Valiev fight that you can take into this one and kind of build?
No, I think stylistically they're different. I like a lot of people say, John, about the size and strength.
But yeah, they're different fighters entirely.
They're different fighters. I mean, and as for size and strength, I don't think, you know, probably Jack's up there is one of the biggest bantamweights in the division. And as you've seen with some of the exchanges in the clinch with Valiev, until you get hold of him and he gets hold of you, you don't appreciate how strong that, you know, he's not muscle bound in as much as, like, you look at some of the shape of some of these guys and his muscles and veins bulging out. But I ask any of them, come and have a clinch up with him and tell me what your thoughts are on how strong Jack Shore is.
I mean, we've seen him fight at featherweight. It's probably fair to say that in the future there will be featherweight. I mean, anybody at bantamweight thinking that they have a sizable strength advantage may be a bit remiss. But what would you be happy with seeing happen this weekend? Obviously a win, but what do you want to see in terms of the game plan and what can come to be? Do you want to see, I mean, when we're talking about being on the prelims and hunting exposure, some people would bring up, oh, let's hunt finishes. Anybody who watches Jack understands he is a finisher, and there's some fights that have him.
We, as I said, we're not about the glitz and glamour. We're about the business. And, you know, winning fights means that he earns more money than losing fights looking spectacular. You know, we'll go in there. If we get a first round finish, brilliant. If we get a second round finish, brilliant. If we get a 3-round split decision, brilliant. The most important thing for us as a team is a win. Keep the momentum going. This is a really tricky fight. Once we get past, there's other fights I'm a lot more confident in that are further up the pecking order than Ricky Simone. You know, so we're under no illusions what we're up against. We are fully prepared. I'm guessing Ricky's fully prepared. I just think you will see an all-action, frantic 3 rounds possibly, unless we're lucky and we catch him one of the earlier rounds. You know, but Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. You know, I think we got the pinch on the boxing. Ricky's probably got the pinch on the pure wrestling. But it's MMA wrestling. It's not NCAA wrestling. So I'll be interested to see how they match up with his styles.
Yeah, they really contradict one another's fight styles in a beautiful way, in a sense. Really excited for this fight. Think it's going to steal the show. Richard, thank you so much for being so easy to get in touch with on Fight Week. Really happy we had this chat. And hey, good luck to Jack. Hopefully we speak soon with a victorious Jack and Richard Shore.
Yeah, thanks for your support. Cheers, John. Love the T-shirt.
Conceive, believe, achieve.
This is former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Michael Bisping.
Paddy the Baddy here. You're listening to Combat Sports UK.
And you're watching Combat Sports UK.